In today's episode, Oregon is now suing the Trump administration for sending troops to Portland. Secondly, Mayor Eric Adams has ended his campaign for a second term. And finally, there are more additional details about the suspect behind the mass shooting at a church in Michigan. And all these stories will show you what both sides are saying and then give you the bottom line.
Now we turn our attention to Portland, Oregon, where the president is sending National Guard troops to protect ICE facilities from further Antifa attacks. The president said he would send all necessary troops to protect the city, authorizing full force against domestic terrorism if necessary.
200 members of the Oregon National Guard have been deployed for 60 days, but Oregon's governor and Portland's mayor say the move is unnecessary, and they are fighting back now, filing federal lawsuits and calling the deployment an abuse of power.
Correspondent Jonathan Cho joins us live from Portland with the very latest on the ground there. Jonathan, what can you tell us?
Hey, well, no sign of any Antifa militants right now behind me, but there was quite a different scene late last night right in front of that ICE facility during the so-called direct action. It was arguably one of the most violent ones so far. At least 2 people were arrested for disorderly conduct and assault, and multiple fights and skirmishes broke out in the streets between Antifa and counter-protesters. Hundreds of people showed up for Sunday evening's demonstration, which lasted for more than 8 hours. Officers had to use pepper spray and non-lethal rounds to control this unruly crowd of mostly left-wing extremists who are demanding the closure of this ICE facility.
Okay, so bottom line up front, it's a new week, and it's the same old story from Democrats when the president wants to protect federal assets, meaning ICE officers and ICE detention facilities. What do as a reaction? They sued the Trump administration. That's exactly happening. And guys, there's so much information now in our political landscape. It's so important for you to be able to do your own research. And the only way you're going to do that is by seeing what both sides are saying. And that's why I have ground news here on the screen as it pertains to this particular story. One cool thing about ground news is it pulls in all of the articles. And if you just read the headlines from these articles, it kind of tells you what the narrative is. Now, we're just looking at the articles that lean left for right now. As an example, some are just saying, hey, Oregon decided to sue the Trump administration. Others are saying that he didn't even consult with them. Others are saying it's a threat. Other articles are saying that Portland will fight back against this. Obviously, others are questioning his authority and mocking the president. So when you put all that together, you could kind of see the narrative from left-wing media as it pertains to this story. Now, before I show you what the right is talking about, let's hear more about how Portland is reacting to this move from the president.
There is no word yet on when the troops the president has called for will arrive in Portland, but the protesters are already there in numbers. Hundreds showing up outside the city's ICE facility last night to make clear their anger at the idea that troops are, as President Trump said over the weekend, needed to protect ICE facilities from what he labeled domestic terrorists in a city he called, quote, war-ravaged Portland. There was little confrontation last night, with large numbers of federal agents deployed to face down the protesters and to escort vehicles in and out of the facility. 2 arrests were made. Officials in Oregon have filed a lawsuit to stop the troop deployment, saying it breaches the Constitution and could in fact cause rather than prevent violence.
The president's actions today only serve to further divide us as a nation, as a community, under the guise of caring about public safety.
When the president and I spoke yesterday, I told him in very plain language that there is no insurrection or threat to public safety that necessitates military intervention in Portland or any other city in our state.
Yeah, see, the interesting thing is we have to get into the mind of these Democrat leaders. And we have to understand their history and their behavior over the past decade as it pertains to Trump. They would rather deal with crime in their city and let it go untethered as long as it doesn't give Donald Trump a win. Think about that. They'd rather tolerate their neighbors being terrorized by criminals, American citizens who are criminals, including illegal aliens that are criminals. They'd rather allow that to happen than to give the president a win. That's why they allow Antifa to do what they do. And that's exactly what you find out when you start reading the headlines that lean right on ground news as it pertains to this story. You'll find that the headlines start to match this narrative that the Trump administration is really doing this because it's about Antifa. Portland is the headquarters for Antifa. That's how some people see it. So it makes sense that he would be doing this, especially when they continue to attack ICE detention facilities. And that's why I encourage you guys to do your own research, because I wouldn't know that if I wasn't reading these headlines before I do the show and then comparing them. It really makes it clear in my mind what's going on. And I think it'll do the same thing for you. So if you want to use this tool for yourself, all you have to do is go to ground.news/Devori, or you could download the mobile app. Just use promo code Devori, and it's going to give you access to everything that I showed you in this video, including 40% off the Vantage plan.
Now, some residents, meantime, used the hashtag war-ravaged Portland to mock the president's words, posting what they said were pictures and video of bustling Portland restaurants, bike paths, and farmers markets over the weekend. But these are the scenes that President Trump is referencing: regular protests that have been taking place outside federal facilities in Portland for months now, and which have on several occasions become violent, as you see right there. Some 24 people have been arrested since those protests started in June, some of them charged with assaulting federal officers. Now, the president says those protests, Bill, are a symbol of what Portland has become over the past few years, what he calls a hotbed of insurrection.
Yeah, it's no question it's a hotbed for insurrection, and Democrats tolerate it because I just said earlier they'd rather tolerate that than give the president a win. And that's how disgusting and divisive our politics in this country has become. So that's why when Democrats try to claim the moral high ground and chastise Trump and his supporters, I laugh at them because they're walking hypocrites. Why don't you take care of what's happening in your own home, in your own backyard, before you start coming at the president? And if you were doing that, the president wouldn't be looking at Portland. But that's just me. And it's not just Portland, by the way. This is a good segue to the update that's happening in Chicago, because we know federal authorities are already there. ICE agents have been plussed up in that city. They were on the ground during the weekend. And now we have a reaction, including from the local leaders who say this is terrorizing the city of Chicago. Take a listen.
Border Patrol agents have been patrolling and marching through parts of the city. We have been hearing from these local elected officials and the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights at this press conference, as they say all of this has gone too far.
You claim that you're out to get the worst of the worst, but we see time and time again that the people that you are apprehending and kidnapping and interrogating and terrorizing are hard-working people that make Chicago and Illinois a better place for everyone.
So their message remains the same. They are continuing to send out local organizations through these streets to make sure that citizens know their rights here. Everyone understands what's going on. Now, Governor J.B. Pritzker also just released a statement speaking out against this federal escalation that we have seen here in Chicago this weekend. He says it is another effort by the Trump administration to intimidate people in Illinois. He urges everyone to know their rights and stay alert. So we'll see how the rest of the day shapes up as this press conference continues at this hour.
Now, just to make sure you guys understand exactly what you're going to continue to hear, especially from Democrats, if you're on social media, some of your friends or family, they have been programmed to believe that Chicago is just fine. They don't have a crime issue. We don't need additional federal resources. We don't need National Guard troops. We are good. That's what they want the American public to believe. The problem is the people who live there would say otherwise. And this is how bad it's become. Now you have people on MSDNC claiming that the people of Chicago don't want this. Like the people of Chicago don't want crime to come down. They don't want illegal immigration to be dealt with. Are you kidding me? We saw the city council meetings. We saw the citizens of Chicago screaming at Mayor Brandon Johnson. And that's not my opinion. Just look at his approval rating. I'm not too sure there's a worse mayor in this country that governs a large city that has the approval rating that he has. So I think that kind of tells you the story here. And here is MSDNC doing exactly what I just said, trying to make people believe that this isn't what they want. Take a listen.
What is the strategy behind this if the people there that you were supposed to be protecting are saying we don't need that protection, there's no problem, we can handle this? It seems like some kind of political roadmap that the president is following in his own head rather than responding to a need and doing it in a way the military is not supposed to be used in the first place.
Well, if you're using federal agents and you're using additional ICE agents, let's say going to Chicago, that's the president has a constitutional authority to do that, whether he should or not. When you start moving into the National Guard and then military troops, military troops especially, not allowed for crime control, just not allowed.
Joe Scarborough is wrong in the way that he's characterizing it, okay? So plussing up the DEA and marshals and other federal agencies to assist local authorities to crack down on crime is absolutely within the authority of the president, no question. The troops are required for when federal property is being vandalized, damaged, and the local federal agencies don't have enough people to prevent that from happening. So you bring the troops in as support. Now, of course, it's already something that is nothing new. We saw it happen in Los Angeles, and the Insurrection Act is not required. We had to look it up here for you. And that active duty troops on federal land is authorized. The commander-in-chief can deploy military forces for defensive purposes on federal property. That's constitutional authority, no Insurrection Act needed. Now, the Insurrection Act would be needed if the governor and local officials start to resist and they refuse to act or openly stop people from destroying federal property. That's what I'm saying. Democrats are doing it to themselves. And while they're doing this, they're continuing to ignore the people on the ground who say, we actually support this. Take a listen.
It's been a smorgasbord of activities. A lot of folks, I'd say the majority, are actually glad we're here. They are congratulating us, saying it's about time you're here. Especially those inner city residents here in Chicago are very glad we're here because oftentimes they're up against that vast illegal migration that took place over the past 4 years. They're the ones dealing with the violence perpetrated by illegal aliens, trained to Aragua, violent gang members that are here in Chicago.
But we spoke with tourists who captured this picture of a family being detained by Border Patrol agents near Millennium Park. They tell me that the baby was crying and that they heard about all the violence in Chicago, but have not felt unsafe until they saw federal officers walking around with guns, and they are not the only ones who feel that way.
That was pretty alarming just to see a group of masked guys walking around with ARs, silenced ARs. It's pretty intimidating, especially for people here.
If you are a federal agent, why are you hiding behind a mask instead of hiding behind a badge? You might as well go ahead and just anybody can dress up as an ICE agent and be like, well, I'm here to detain you for no reason. The next thing you know, people are going missing.
All right, so let's just address those criticisms because there are plenty of people who obviously support this move from the president, even people who are Democrats. The fact of the matter is this. If Democrat leaders would just hand over the criminals in the jails, they wouldn't have to hit the streets. But see, like I said earlier, Democrats have put the Trump administration in this position. This is the next logical move. If they would keep ICE busy by just handing the criminals over, they wouldn't have time to be hitting the streets. But because Democrats want to force, they want to resist, it backfires on them every single time. And you're going to have people who criticize, hey, these people were just detained in a park and their kid was with them. Of course, people are going to see that, and some people will be disturbed by it. But that doesn't mean what is happening is wrong, unconstitutional, and is illegal. And now we go to our next update. As you guys may have heard over the weekend, Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, has dropped out of the mayoral race. And that pretty much confirms what we already know is going to be the end result, which is that Zohran Mamdani will probably be the next mayor of New York City, barring some freakish accident or something crazy with the polls. But here is the story about it and what they say is behind his decision. But we're also going to get the reaction from the president. Take a listen.
I cannot continue my re-election campaign. The constant media speculation about my future and the campaign finance board's decision to withhold millions of dollars have undermined my ability to raise the funds needed for a serious campaign.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams throwing in the towel, ending his struggling campaign for a second term with just 5 weeks left before the November election. The mayor announcing his decision on social media. Adams cites two critical factors that allegedly killed his chances for re-election: relentless media speculation about whether he would drop out, as well as cuts to matching funds needed to run a competitive campaign. Days ago, Adams insisted he wasn't going anywhere, but polling shows him stuck in fourth place with single-digit support. The spotlight now shifting to what is shaping up to be a heated three-way contest between Zohran Mamdani, Andrew Cuomo, and Republican Curtis Sliwa. President Trump taking to Truth Social this morning, calling Mamdani a self-proclaimed New York City communist and saying Mamdani would be one of the best things to ever happen to Republicans. Trump claiming Mamdani would never be able to get federal funding, calling his policies fake communist promises.
Here's the fact of the matter. Eric Adams never had a chance, okay? If you just look at the polling starting on day one, he just never had a chance. Now, there's a couple of theories behind why that is. I just believe the Democrats continue to make classical mistakes. Why would you allow Andrew Cuomo to run for the mayor of New York City when we saw what happened to him as governor? That doesn't make any sense. That's the best you can do. But hey, I'm not complaining. If this is what Democrats want to do, go right on ahead. I just think that it's boneheaded, these decisions they continue to make as a party, and leaning in on Zohran Mamdani. Yeah, that's just a classical one. And the most of Americans and majority of Americans don't even buy what he is selling in particular. But let's hear from Zohran Mamdani himself as he reacts to what the president had to say. Take a listen.
Read to you, Donald Trump tweeted, Truth Social, whatever the social media thing is. Self-proclaimed New York City communist Zohran Mamdani, who is running for mayor, will prove to be one of the best things ever to happen for the great Republican Party. He'll have problems with Washington like no mayor in history. So basically, he's threatening you again in the wake of Adams dropping out of the race. What's your response to that? No, you're worried that New York will be in a worse position with the federal government if you become mayor.
I think that Donald Trump is going through the stages of grief. He began with denial, where he said that there was no way we could win this race and that he would use every tool at his disposal to ensure that that was the case. And we saw that in phone calls that he had with Andrew Cuomo and briefings that he had with pollsters. And now we've reached the point where he's coming to terms with the fact that we're going to win this race. And he's coming to terms with it because New Yorkers are tired of a politics here in this city that has more to do with Washington than it has to do with the people of this same city. And what we're seeing is even when you have a mayor who is collaborating to every extent possible with this administration, you are still seeing a federal policy of detaining New Yorkers as young as 6 years old, of withholding more than $50 million in funding from our schools, of taking $80 million out of a bank account.
All right, so I don't think I need to defend the Trump administration for those decisions to freeze funding. We know exactly where the money was going. It was going to luxury hotels for illegal aliens. But hey, that's more important than veterans. That's more important than actual New Yorkers who are American citizens. The lie about New Yorkers being detained as early as 6 years old. What they don't understand is that they are betting on the fact you won't do your research, okay? It's just the same thing every single week. If you go read up the stories, you find out, no, ICE did not detain a 6-year-old. They detained the adult that was in the room with the 6-year-old. And then they had to make a decision. Will the 6-year-old go with him or will he stay? It's the same stuff every single time. And it gets annoying after a while because they think you're that stupid. But what I'm not stupid of is that Zohran Mamdani is a result of what's wrong with our system. Just like Trump is a result, what's wrong with politics. If you keep ignoring the American voter, they will do a radical thing. Like electing Donald Trump was a radical thing at the time. Electing Zohran Mamdani is a radical thing, and the numbers support it. Take a look.
This move is not a thump. It is a dud of a move. What am I talking about here? Well, take a look here. Mamdani leads regardless or whether or not Adams stayed in the race or whether he got out just as he did. With Adams in the race, Mamdani was ahead by 19 points. With no Adams, look at this. Mamdani still ahead and still ahead substantially by 15 points. I guess you can argue the margin got a little bit smaller, but either way you're looking at it, Mr. Berman, it's still a double-digit lead for the Democratic nominee.
Yeah, 15-point win. Pretty good.
Pretty good.
Not as good as 19 points, but pretty good. So why is it that Mamdani is still ahead?
Yeah, okay. The reason why is pretty simple, and that is that the opposition is divided. Mamdani with 45%, and of course there's all this idea, hey, you know, Adams' support's going to go to Cuomo. He's at 30%, but there's still a Republican nominee, Curtis Sliwa, getting 17% of the vote. So regardless of whether or not Eric Adams left or stayed in the race, you still have an opposition that is divided. But what happens if Curtis Sliwa drops out? Well, Andrew Cuomo gets to 42%, but Mamdani still leads with 49%. No matter which way you slice the New York pizza pie, Mamdani is still the favorite. And I should note, even if Andrew Cuomo got out, that Curtis Sliwa would in fact be an underdog to Mamdani as well.
All right. So bottom line to this story, Zohran Mamdani will be the next mayor of New York City, as I stated. I really do believe that. And if you're wondering why it matters, it's because this is what's going to continue to happen to Democrats. They have not provided any inclination that they're going to go the opposite of Zohran. They're going to lean into his socialist policies, his communist thinking. Why is that? Because he's winning an election. If he wins it officially, that's something that Democrats will look at and say, well, he won an election, so let's just do what he's doing. The problem is most of Americans don't trust what Democrats are already selling. And if they add on this type of rhetoric, that's definitely not going to work. So obviously Republicans will encourage it. Now let's go to our next story. This is an update regarding the shooting that occurred at a LDS church in Michigan. We now know the identity of the shooter. We also know his background. And now the only question is, what was his motive?
The investigation into the motive behind this attack is still ongoing. We're expecting a press conference from law enforcement officials at some point this morning, but we were able to move now closer to where the scene is. There's a car over here that has bullet holes, but what we can now see is the church itself. I'll move out of the way so you have a better picture. You can see the charred remains of that church itself. You can smell it from where we are, but we've seen FBI agents, ATF agents, people who appear to be in hazmat gear with shovels digging through those ruins. We know there was ongoing search efforts overnight that had to be suspended when things got dark, but this is a part of the efforts happening to search for 7 possibly unaccounted for people inside of that church. We know hundreds of people were inside as the church was set on fire after that gunman crashed through the front doors and started shooting at people. We spoke to a neighbor, Wolf, who's just down the street about this tragedy. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We kept talking about why do shooters pick on schools or why do they pick on churches? And, you know, it was like because they're soft targets, but it just doesn't make sense. You know, if you're a good human being, you don't pick on churches and schools, and it's just disturbing to tie all that together.
Now, the shooter has been identified as 40-year-old Thomas Jacob Sanford, a United States Marine veteran who deployed to Iraq. Here's a photo of him. Now, keep that photo in your mind because Democrats were very quick to say that he was MAGA by doing something like this. As you guys could see on the left, that's him, his wife, his son, and then on the right are these crazy unhinged leftists online pushing this photoshopped photo. And guess what? Even Mr. Eric Swalwell, or CCP Swalwell, as I like to call him, posted it himself on his account. This is a member of Congress. I'm sure J.D. Vance agrees with me that it doesn't matter that the Michigan terrorist was a MAGA supporter, because in America, regardless of your politics, violence has never been the answer. He just assumes, doesn't even realize this is a photoshopped of this individual and that shirt. Now, let's get to some people who say they actually knew the shooter and they have a different opinion of him. Take a listen.
A little bit, right?
Yeah, pretty upsetting. Very upsetting to know that it's right in your backyard. I mean, it's terrible of what's happening.
Okay, and you all are live pretty closely to here. Yeah, we're roughly a mile from here. So okay, when you heard all the sirens and see the helicopter, it's like, you know, what's going on? Okay, so rushed over here to see what was going on, and that was before it was even publicized. You know, that he lived in this area. I'm like, I'm going to check that out, see what's going on. Okay. So that's what we did.
Imagine it's a small town. Do you know, I don't know if you know the suspect or know anyone who knows the suspect or any
Don't know the suspect, but I just was speaking with somebody in the church parking lot back over here that is a really good friend of his. Said he was a true stand-up guy, would do anything for anybody, and he has no clue why something like this, you know, would happen or why he would go this way because of the type of person he was. So it's just society's getting bad. We got to do something.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much, Jason.
Okay, so I actually stand corrected. It wasn't the people speaking that knew him. They spoke to someone in the church who knew him, and They said that he was a stand-up guy, never thought he'd do something like this. So obviously there's only really two scenarios. Some people say this is a false flag. This person was activated by the federal government in some way, shape, or form, part of the deep state, etc. Obviously, I'd like to see definitive evidence on that, but not too sure we will ever get that. But the second one, which is also interesting, is one of the individuals who actually ran for city council in that city was on a podcast with a guy named Dave Bondi, and his podcast is called Keeping It Real. So definitely go check it out for yourself so you can hear the full interview. I'm just going to show you a clip that I thought was the most profound. He said he actually talked to him when he was campaigning, knocked on his front door, and the conversation turned quickly into how much he hated the Mormon church and thought it was the Antichrist. Take a listen.
So at no time did you feel there wasn't any threatening or violence. It was just kind of you thought off the wall kind of talking.
Exactly. It wasn't like next week, this Sunday, I'm going to do. It was more of a case of just views that were shared. And again, I mean, what I just walked away from was a person who was very animated and it mentioned that, for lack of a better term, that Mormons were the Antichrist.
Okay. And obviously troubling, but nothing that you would have need to alert police for anything.
No, I mean, not to say just in pop culture, but if you listen to enough YouTube, social media, like you hear different views on either side. And so it wasn't anything that I would say was violence inducing, but just people of all stripes have very sharp views. And I was like, okay. And I just, again, I have a very indirect relationship with the Church of Latter-day Saints. And I just kept those views to myself and just very carefully walked away.
Okay. So, and you are saying that you are 100% sure this is the same individual you talked to. Was it last week?
Yes, it was last Wednesday or Thursday. Dave, 1,000,000% I spoke with him. I can remember, where his house is. I had the conversation. Yes.
Okay. A lot of people want always to know in these horrible situations why someone does this. So in your mind, this maybe answers that question.
It has to be. I mean, there was very little political talk when we spoke, and it wasn't that. I mean, Dave, outside of just like, hey, how are you? How's the weather? It immediately shifted towards his thoughts on the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris Johns spoke to the shooter, as he stated. And the fact of the matter is that this is really tough, because think about this for a second. We have people in this country that are paying their rent, their mortgage, paying their taxes, served in the military, and then out of the blue, all of a sudden, they're shooting up churches. How does that happen? That obviously requires some detailed level of investigation from the FBI, and I hope, obviously, Kash Patel and the rest of them will make that happen, because clearly, I'm not too sure what the solution here is when that is taking place. How do you prevent something like that from happening? Now, it's easy to figure out Antifa and groups like that because they are predictable, right? They're not regular, sound, emotionally well people, okay? They're not flying under the radar. This guy clearly was flying under the radar. So if what they're saying is true, obviously, because I know some people, and I'm one of them in some cases, don't believe anything that I'm being told by the authorities, but we'll see. Now, here's what the governor had to say when she held a press conference, and she even mentioned that the president did call her. Take a listen.
This community is reeling right now, and I want you to know that the state of Michigan has your back. Your grief is our grief. I ordered flags lowered statewide, and I spoke with President Trump yesterday, who wanted to share his condolences. We will be here every step of the way and coordinate a full response with our local and federal partners. Folks here at the township, at every level, have been working closely together.
Okay, so it is still too early to figure out exactly what his motive was and more information about him, but all we do have is his name. He served in our military, and he went to Iraq, and he snapped and committed this heinous act. And that's what the authorities have told us at this point. Anybody's talking about that he's MAGA is ridiculous, because there's no supporting evidence to say that or show that. Michigan hides their voter registrations. You actually have to file documentation to get access to it. So obviously we're going to find out over the next 72 hours. But bottom line is, please pray for the victims of that tragedy. It's just terrible to hear that. And Christianity is still under attack, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's hear from you guys in the comments section below to these stories today. What do you think the motive was behind this act that happened in Michigan? Let me know your thoughts about that. Secondly, what do you make of Eric Adams dropping out of the race? Clearly, Zohran Mamdani has been leading since day one. I'm not too sure that's going to make a difference, as you guys seen. And then Oregon is now suing the Trump administration for deploying federal resources, including the National Guard, to protect federal assets. What do you make of their reaction and how Democrats have overall been handling this entire situation regarding ICE? Just give me your thoughts and more in the comment section below. All right, now this takes us to our next video. There was a study published by Axios where it's titled "Left-Wing Terrorism is on the Rise. It's higher than it's ever been in 30 years." And plus more updates from yesterday. So if you guys want to check out that video, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.